Hello everyone, Pastor Ian here, and we're going to make 8 cards. This is a follow-up to the die cutting technique video that I posted previously. So we're going to use those same techniques and some of those cutouts. We're actually going to make 8 cards using those techniques. With this particular first card, we're using the shadow die there. We've cut out the shadow die of the seahorse floaty, and we're using the triangle pattern. I use this a lot on my cards. We'll take 2 different pieces of cardstock and cut them into triangles and put them on the front of a card. So we're going to go ahead and prep the card, and then what we're going to do is we're going to fill in the seahorse with the shadow of a different color, and then we're also going to add an actual, the main die on top of that. And so you're going to have some nice depth and some dimension to the front of the card as a result of that. So that's what we do on this card. So you can see we cut it out of the lighter blue, and we just fill that right in there. And then we're going to use this particular die that we cut. This is one of the ones I actually colored myself, just using some precision tip glue there. And we're just going to glue that right on front. So this isn't one that came out of the card pad. This is one that I colored in using colored pencils. And we did some videos on coloring, however you like to color. I'm just a colored pencil guy. That's kind of my go-to thing. So also make sure you keep all the pieces. Got the little middle piece of the die there. We put that in. And so that's the front of the card. We're going to do a little bit more to it, but what I want to do on this card is I want to do something a little different. You see there I've got on the, also don't forget to take your marker and go back through and fill in the eyes and touch up a little bit where you need to. But you see there on the bottom the embossing. One of the techniques we talked about was the embossing, and I actually didn't like that on the front of the card. So I actually cut it, and we're actually going to put that on the inside of the card. I just think it looks a whole lot better, so we'll get to that in a minute. So I got 2 of the smaller seahorses that I stamped and colored, and then we cut out using the die that came with the kit. We're going to add those to the front just to give it just a little more color and a little more character on that blue part. I actually think we're just going to go with 1 seahorse there, and then we're going to use one of the little puffy stickers that came with the kit. And so that's really going to do it for the front. May put that "what a day" on there, but for now what we're going to do on the insides, we're going to put the embossed the 2 embossed floaties. We're going to put that on the inside of the card. I'm going to stamp a sentiment above it. I just thought that looked really neat when you open it up and you've got that on the inside of the card. And the sentiment's going to kind of ring. It's going to kind of ring to speak to it, if you will. It has a little. Just decided to go with one that's about friendship. You got the 2 floaties, so I just thought friendship, just seemed like it would fit. So all we're gonna do here is we're just gonna take a stamping block, and we're gonna pull that out. We're gonna put some ink on it and get it ready. Now when I stamp, I like to have, if I'm not using a stamping platform, you see that I carry just a blank sheet of paper off to the side. I'm gonna stamp it up, and I'm gonna do the first impression on that scrap paper because I want to make sure that I'm getting a lot of ink on there, make sure it's gonna look good. When you're not using a stamping platform and you stamp, if you don't get enough ink on there and you don't get it just right, it's almost impossible to match it back up and fill that in. Then usually what you have to wind up doing is go back with a magic marker, and it just never looks the same. So I always practice first time through, know how much ink to put on there, lining it up with this block, and then we just press down nice and firm. And it says, "Your friendship is everything to me." And that just looks great, I think, with the 2 embossed floaties on the bottom there. And so that's going to do it for the first card. Let's take our stamps, put them back away, and there you go. That's card number 1. All right, so for card number 2, what we're actually going to use now is we're going to use the technique where we cut out the outline out of the front of the card. And I didn't really plan this one through. I wasn't sure I was going to do this, so I'm actually going to put some of the pattern paper that came with it over the top of that card, over that green. I just didn't like the green. It was too plain. So I'm actually going back and I'm cutting that shadow die out of that, and I'm just going to line it up over the top of the card, and we're gonna just glue that down. So in hindsight, I would have laid the 2 pieces together, just cut them both out at the same time. The dies will cut through that with no problem. But for this one, I didn't have that planned. We had to go back and do that here. And I'm just making sure everything's lining up. It's going to fit. It's easier to put the tape on the actual card, so we're going to do that. And then we just line that up and lay that over there, flip it over, and we'll trim off the excess. And that's just the easiest way to do that. But in hindsight, if you're going to do that, go ahead and cut both pieces, line them up, and put them on, run them through the die cutting machine at the same time. All right, so there's my opening for the front. And now we're going to try to decide what we're going to put in there. On this one, I just decided just to stick the blue in there, but now it's cut all the way through, remember. So we cut both of them out, cut out the front of the card and the sunshine over the top there. So the beauty of this is, once this is glued in place, that's actually going to be on the inside of the card. So when they look at the card, you'll see that, but then when they open the card, that's on the inside. And remember, that's one of the techniques we talked about. And so there's two ways you can do it. You can glue it right onto the front of the card. We didn't need that second opening. We could have just left the green card whole, cut it out of the sunshine paper. But when you cut through both of them, it allows you to put that on the inside of the card. So make sure you don't lose your little pieces, having to go back, having to find all my little blue dots off to the side there. And glue those in place to make sure that it looks right. So what you want to do is just make sure that you don't lose track of that. What I'm actually going to do with this one is we're actually going to go back and we're going to glue this green in place. And I just thought that looked really good. And just using a napkin there to pick up any excess glue that might have come through. Make sure it's pressed down good and solid and firm there. So we got the what a day. I'm going to put the A in. And then we'll go back and we'll fill in the circles there with the W and the D. We're going to go back. We need the blue pieces for that. Just don't do it. I've done many times before. Kind of just you pull it off the die cut machine. You throw all the little pieces away, and you forget that you actually need to keep some of those. So make sure you keep up with those. But this is going to fit real nice when they open up the card. It's going to be real nice on the inside. And I just like the way that front looks through. I just like the look of that card. You get that card, and it looks like it's on the front. They open it up, and there it is. So you can see those blue pieces, they just pop right in. Just a little bit of precision glue using my little tweezers, my reverse tweezers there. If you're like me, when you get your first pair of reverse tweezers, it's a little bit of a learning curve. You're squeezing to open them, not to close them, and you kind of got to get used to that. But once you realize how handy these things are, you'll love them because it holds everything in place for you. All right, so we got that part done. But it needs a little bit more, obviously. Card's a little bit plain. Got a little piece sticking up there. And so we're just going to put some glue in there, press that down, make sure that the cardstock's good and solid. So we got the front there. Now it needs a little something to it. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to add a few things. We're just going to put a little one of the seahorses. And this one was actually cut out from the paper pad. You can see that pink background. So this one actually came out of the paper pad. We cut it out using the die out of the paper pad. It's not one that we colored. And just thought that looked really good on the front. So we're going to throw that on the front there. And then we're going to grab some of our embellishments that came with the kit, put a couple of the puffy suns over the actual paper, and then a couple of flip-flops. And there's card number 2. All right, guys, so card number 3, went a little bit of a different direction and kind of did the same thing we did on the last card. Decided I wanted to add some pieces over the tops of the card. I didn't like the way it was coming together, so we're cutting out a couple different pieces, using some different cardstock there. And what we're going to do is we're going to switch. I was going to go with the green, decided to go with the blue, couldn't make up my mind. Then we're going to lay that blue over there. We're cutting out backgrounds. What I'm doing is I'm cutting out some shadow dies. Those pieces I'm stacking up to the top and the right side. After you cut them out, they can be used. They can be used later on. You can put words over them. Those are your shadow dies, so you can use those. So what I'm doing on this one is I'm just lining it up because once again, it was kind of after the fact. I decided that I wanted to take these two pieces and cut them out and layer them over that blue. And what I did there is I'm using a pencil to mark where the die was because it's a little bit tricky trying to get it lined up just right. I want to make sure everything fit well. And again, it's a lot easier way to do this. But if for some reason you decide after the fact you want to do that, just lay your die on the paper and put a pencil mark on it. And that way you'll know how to line up the die so that you can cut it out of a second sheet and it'll match up over that first sheet. All right, so we got those cut out of the sunflower again. We're going to lay that over the top of the blue. So again, just like we did the other card. And you see this time is a little different because this time what we're using is we're using one of the floaties and we're going to use one of the sentiments, the what a day sentiment. So we're going to go ahead and put some glue, just easier because of the die cuts and the corners and the edges. Just use the fine tip precision glue there to put some good glue down. Get that glued on nice and firm, get that in place, and then as always, flip it over and just cut off the excess to line up with the main card base. Probably seen this technique done a lot. If you haven't, if you're seeing it for the first time, it's just a great hack. It's a nice little cheat, nice little way to line up card fronts instead of if you can't get it exactly measured just right. If you're doing something after the fact, like I'm doing, then it's a great little hack. So what we're going to do now is we're going to take and we're going to insert one of the, we're doing this a little bit different because I was trying to decide, do I want to insert the main die? Do I want to insert, do I want to put a base to it or not? And I decided it didn't look right without the base. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to put in that dark blue outline die. We're going to glue that in. Again, this is going to wind up being on the inside of the card. So just go ahead and layer it in the hole so that it lines up good, and then you just pull the top around it. Once that's glued down nice and firm, got it right where you need it to be, and then we can put the main die over that. Now on this one, I'm doing something a little bit different because what I wanted to do was, this was actually cut out. The what a day was actually cut out. I cut it out, both of them together. I was going to pull the words out and use two different colors, but in the end, I just liked the way this looked. And so what I decided to do was leave the lettering inside, and it's not a true emboss because it's actually cut out. You see the A actually fell out there, but it gives it a little more depth. It just looks a little more precision to me. It just looks a little different than if we had just embossed it. We could have done that. We could have run the whole thing through the die cutting machine and embossed it. But I like the way that looks. So I'm actually going to do that on a couple of cards. Just leave the letters in. That and the fact that pulling those letters out and gluing them down into another one, if you're not using, it doesn't matter how you do it. It's a learning curve. If you're using double-sided adhesive sheets, or if you're using a fine tip precision glue, working with those fine cut letterings like that in the what a days can be a little bit annoying. So we got that put together there, and that's going to wrap up card number 3. All right, so card number 4, we're doing the same thing, but this time we've already got it cut out. All right, this time we had cut 2 pieces out, and we had it lined up using a little fine tip glue around the edges there to make sure that the corners hold in place when we layer this over the top of it. And so we're just going to put that over there, and I put it over a sheet of white paper. It helps you see better, it helps me line up a little better, plus any glue that presses through will go onto the paper and not onto the inside of the card or onto my craft glass mat. So we got that one, and once again, trim off the excess. Starting to see a pattern emerging, but it works. And again, in hindsight, if you cut 2 fronts the same size and cut them out at the same time, you can skip that step. It works either way. Now this one, what we're going to do is, instead of using the shadow die and instead of doing it like we've been doing it, I'm actually just going to use the letters. And we're just going to glue them right in place inside the card. So again, when they open up the card, it'll say what a day. Now I'm actually using a glue stick here, just because that was easier for me. Use whatever works for you. Again, working with these letters, these fine lettering, it's a little bit of a learning curve, but once you get the hang of it, it's a piece of cake. You do it, no problem, and you got a beautiful card when you're done. That particular glue stick that we use, when it dries clear. It's purple when it's wet, and then it dries clear, so I wasn't worried about it being on the card. Make sure it's sticking down there, and then we're going to go back and we're going to grab the A, and we'll throw the A in there the same way. Just flip that over, and just on this one, because it's just the one little letter, we use the fine tip there with the precision with the glue. And so we're just going to drop the A in place, and that's going to do it for the inside of this card. So it looks really good. I like that. You open it up and it says what a day. And it looks like the H was coming up, so we just put a little more glue in there and press down. Whatever glue you're using, just make sure it's a glue that does dry clear. And if you do leave a little residue, make sure you have a glue eraser. If you don't have one of those, you can get one at any hobby store. And you can actually just literally rub that glue right off. So what I'm doing now is I'm just lining up some of these little starfish that came with the kit. And I just felt like the front needed a little more. And so we're just going to pop a little bit of those on there just to give it a little bit of extra dimension on the front of the card. Just a little something to kind of catch the eye. I like dimension on my cards. I like puffiness. I like 3D. I like all kinds of things that sort of catch the eye, and also just like the way when you grab a card you can feel that something's been done to it or something's been added to it. So on this particular card, we're just adding some of these starfish on the front. Now whatever glue you're using, and these are a little tricky, there's plastic. I tried some different glues here. It's sped up, you can't really tell. some of them didn't want to catch, and so I finally just decided to use this glue, the craft glue right there. It's a good strong glue, dries clear, and it seemed to work really well. Put a nice drop on there and press it down, and it just held onto the card front really well, and dried very quickly too, unlike some of the other ones we tried. So like I said, this sped up a little bit, and I did edit some, so you didn't see me wanting to fling plastic starfish on the other side of the room. But now we're just going to add some of those self-adhesive dots. Again, just a little more texture, a little more depth to the front of the card. And that is going to do it for that card. All right, so for card number 5, we're going to use another triangle piece of the pattern paper there. I'm going to go ahead and put some glue on the card and lay that down. And what I've done is we've used the word die. We've cut out the main word die. We're not using a shadow, and we're just cutting that out of the front. And you'll notice that there's some pieces missing. Again, we talked about those little pieces that go in the circular areas there that would normally go back and insert. We're going to leave those out. It looked okay to me. I looked at it and I thought, well, I actually like the way this looks. If you wanted to, you could color it in with a marker and they'd open it up and they'd have these weird little dots on the inside. I thought about doing that, but I thought that's just going to look dumb. So we basically just left this one the way it is. And it looks really good. It was nice and simple, little pretty much straightforward card. It does need a little bit more. So we're going to take some ribbon. And what I did was I just made a little bow here, and we're just going to glue this bow to the front. And what you want to do is just use some good precision glue or some good liquid glue that's going to have some good adhesive strength to it. And we're going to put some glue on it. We're going to press this down right there, kind of just above the what a day. And then actually I think I like it better there. So we're going to press it down there, moving it around, trying to find out where I wanted to put it. And in the end, I think I decided that it just looked better in that spot. So we're going to glue it down. We're just going to set it aside and let that glue dry. We'll show you at the end when we show you all the cards how well that holds to the card. So I just think it looks really good right there and kind of draws your attention into that what a day. And that's going to do it for that card. We'll set it aside and let it dry. All right, for card number 6, we're using a couple of different techniques here. What I'm actually going to do with this card is, and I'm trying to figure out what I wanted to do with this one. What I'm actually going to do is, I decided I didn't like that pink, and so we're going to take this card and we're going to trim it to fit the front of the white card, and we're just going to glue that. I like the beach balls. I just thought that looked really nice and had a nice summer feel to it. So we're going to glue that there. And I'm going to take that main pink front that I was going to use, and we're going to insert in, and I'm going to just trim it down into a square. And then I'm going to put that on the front of the card as a separate piece. So I'm just taking, what I'm doing now is I'm just trying to figure out where I want to cut it, what size I want it to be to try and keep it uniform. So I'm getting an idea of how long it is, and then I'm going to go back and I'm going to trim off each side equally. So we know how much to trim off of that side, and then we bring it down to this side, and then we make it nice and equal. And then we do the same thing with the other side. You could just eyeball it, but depending on how OCD or ADD you are, you're gonna want to be a little more precise. And so on this one, I'm going to trim off a little bit more off the bottom. Looks good. Got it nice and equal. At least it looks equal to my eye. Trimming it a little bit closer because I don't want that much hanging over the front of the card. I didn't want to take away from the beach balls. Looks good. And we're going to take and we're going to use my favorite little tool, corner round. And we're just going to round that off. And then we're just going to glue that right on the front of the card. And you can see there that my corner round was getting full of scrap pieces. Keep those. If you make shaker cards, guess what you got? Nice little pieces that you can put into your shaker cards. So don't throw things like that away. Whenever you dump out your little hole punch or something like that, keep those. You can use them, especially if you got a bunch of different colorful pieces. So we put that pink piece on the front. Now we're going to go back. We're going to insert the shadow die. And this one's one I'd already had it kind of put together. I'm trying to decide, do I want to change? What do I want to do? This is another one where I just liked the green. I liked the way it looked, leaving the main letters in there, and I just decided that's what I'm going to do. I didn't like the blue. I didn't like the yellow. Everything I tried didn't look right. That just seemed to fit. So we're just going to grab some glue, throw it on the back, press it in place. Sometimes you start with a card in mind, and your creativity says one thing, and then when you go to put it together, you get something totally different. Now I'm not sure what I did here, but somehow or another that little piece of green in the Y, that one little circle piece disappeared. I don't know if it got glued underneath it. I don't know if it fell out. But we're gonna fix that with a little sneaky little maneuver here in just a minute. I actually thought about seeing if one of these other pieces would fit, but the color didn't match, just looked stupid. So we're gonna do something a little bit different. What we're gonna do now is we're gonna reach over and we're gonna grab our little enamel dots that we used on our other car that came with the kit. And I'm just gonna grab an enamel dot. I'm gonna pop it right over where that spot is. And we're just gonna put that in place. And it's gonna cover that little spot up. There you go. Just like that. Now it would look stupid with just one dot, so we're going to throw some dots over those other round places as well. And look at that. Look how that kind of sneakily covers up my mistake and at the same time gives that dimension to the card. So once we get all the dots on there, good to go. And then I decided one little thing needed, seemed like it needed something, and flip-flops. We're going to throw a couple of flip-flops down in the corner, and we're going to have a nice summer card ready to go. And that's going to finish off that card. All right, so for cards 7 and 8, we're going to use the technique where we take two different color cardstock and we cut the main die out of those two different pieces of cardstock, and then we just swap them out. So you see we've got the light pink and the dark pink there. And we've cut those out, and we're going to adhere those to a card front. We're actually going to go back. We're going to add some paper to the front of the card as well. We're not going to use the white. So we're just going to go ahead and just using some glue. We're going to glue that down. And we're going to do this just a little bit different. On this one, we're actually gluing the cutout to the bottom. And on this one, we're actually going to glue it to the top. So you can see I use both my tape runner and my liquid glue there, just whatever works for you. And we're actually going to glue this one to the top, and then when we put the cards together and put the paper across the front, one will go across the top, one will go across the bottom. All right, so we got those on there ready to go. So the next thing we want to do is trim down my cardstock just to kind of have it lined up a little bit width-wise. I wanted the length where it needed to be. I wasn't concerned about the height because we're going to trim that down. But I did want to go ahead and make sure it was wide enough. That way I could kind of get it lined up the way I wanted. So we're just going to put our glue in place. It's easier to put it on the card front. That way when I put this down, I know it's grabbing where I want it to grab. And we just flip it over and trim it off. Got that one ready to go. Then we're going to do the same thing with this one. We're going to put some glue down on it, trying to decide which way I want the fish, if I wanted to trim them or not. And decided I didn't like the way the fish was on the bottom, so I'm trimming it just to where I can get a nice even line of fish. I didn't want kind of half a fish floating across the top of the card. So we're going to trim that down just a little bit before we throw it on there. So we're going to go ahead and put our glue on. And then we're going to do just like we did the other one. We're going to just line that up and press it down. And this way, when we trim it off, we got a nice line of 3 fish there with just a little bit at the top cut off. So it just looked a little better to me. If I hadn't lined it up that way, it would have wound up with 2 rows of fish, but a top and a bottom row would have been cut in half, and just didn't think that would have looked right. So pay attention to little things like that when you're lining stuff up. Just look at it before you glue it down. Once you glue it down, you're pretty much done. So we're going to go ahead now. We're going to insert the light pink into the dark pink. Now here's the trick. You notice you got the little center of the floaties there. We're going to go back and we're going to fill those in with the dark pieces just to give it that little bit of depth and just color and make it look more like the backside kind of coming through the floaties there. Just thought that looked a little bit better. So then we're going to go ahead and take the dark pink, put that in over the light pink. Do the exact same thing. Just going to do that on the other card. Now you could have cut out and used a colored, used this same technique and just used a one that you stamped and then colored in. Any way you could have done it. We could have actually cut out one from the cardstock, from the paper pad. But what I like about this technique is it's sort of that, not so much a monochrome, but it's the simplicity of color. What stands out is the edging and the designs in the die cut. more so than the color, if you will. Now we do need to do a little bit more to these cards. They are missing something. So we're going to have to add a few things to these cards to kind of make them stand out the way we want them to stand out. So we're going to use a combination of die cutting, our die cuts, and our lettering, and we're going to use our stamps, and we're actually going to stamp onto the cards. What I actually wound up deciding was I didn't like the lettering. I didn't like the what a day. The colors weren't lining up. I didn't want to cut any more out. I thought, let's just work with our stamps. Let's just use the stamps that came with the kit. So again, I didn't have this planned out, but as I began to lay it out, I began to see that there's these nice open spaces where these sentiments are going to fit perfectly. So we're going to stamp. We're actually going to use that part. It came with the card kit. Might as well put it to use. So we're going to use our stamps to kind of lay out some sentiments on the front of these cards. And so at this point, I'm just laying things out, just taking a different look, trying to see what I like, what I think is going to fit. We got 4 different things going on there. Could have used the same ones on the different cards, different ways, but that's the way I think it looked best. So as always, going to do my little sample. I like that. Looks good. Did it twice. Looks good. So we're going to go ahead and throw that on the card. Press down. Boom. Let your troubles float away. Again, if you don't get that ink just right, you can go back and fill it in with a fine marker, a black marker. But if you're going to stamp, just go ahead and stamp. If you're going to write, then you might as well just grab a marker and write it. And so we got that one. Says, let your troubles float away. Happy summer. We're going to go back and do a little bit more of that in just a minute, but that's good for now. We're going to go ahead and stamp on this one. And on this floaty, on this particular one, we're going to stamp down with a little bit of an angle, just to make it fit. But I love this one, floating by to say, happy birthday. What a great card for someone whose birthday falls in summer. All right. So now what we're going to do is we're grabbing our glue, and we just needs a little something on the front of the card. So we're going to use some of those little starfish that came with it. We're going to glue those onto the front of the cards, and just a little bit of embellishments on each one of those. And what I'm doing off camera right now, again, is trying to get my glue to come through the bottle. That was being a little difficult. Once we got that working, we're able to put those back down. Again, you just got to find a glue that works for you, depending on what you're gluing down. Some things will work, some things won't. Some liquid adhesives work better than others. It's just trial and error. So have you a nice little box full of different glues and things. You want your tape runner, you want your liquid glues and glue sticks, and you can try them all out. All right, so that card's done. So this card, we're going to go back to our beautiful little enamel dots, and we're just going to kind of pop those in there. Didn't want to mess with the fish up top, just thought those just looked too good. So we're just going to pop these on. And that's going to do it for that card, but I felt like it needed something else. Now there's videos out there that show you how to do this. What I'm doing is highly sped up, how to tie a bow around your fingers. Go find those videos. They're a lot better than mine. But in the end, once I tried it and remembered how to do it, and I usually have to watch the video every time I do this, we just trim that down. We're going to put a little glue on the back of that. We're going to put it in place. And we're going to set that aside to dry, and we'll take a look at that at the end once we review all of our cards. But for now, just a little bit of liquid adhesive, put it where we want it, set it aside and let it dry. All right, for our last card, card number 9, Chaos card. That's what I'm calling this card, the Chaos card. I had literally no idea what I was wanting to do. You can see at this point I'm just grabbing scraps of paper and trying to figure out what I wanted to do. A lot of people are making slimline cards now, though I thought, yeah, I'll take a stab at that. And there's actually a die that came with the kit, a little swirly die and sort of a wave die, and I thought I was going to use it, wound up not using it. So at this point, I'm just trying anything. Layering strips of paper to try and see what I like. What I'm wanting to do is I'm wanting to use that puffy die technique that I mentioned in the other video, where we have embossed the shadow die and then we lay the main die over the top of that. So what I'm doing now is I'm just finding some pretty colored craft stock, paper craft stock that I like, that left over in the pad. I'm going to put that there. I'm going to put some different layers on there, and I'm literally just grabbing and trying different things. Looking at sentiments, trying to figure out, I got that nice white space up top, so we're going to put something up there. And at this point, what I want to do is I want to go ahead and stamp it. If I don't stamp it and I start putting paper down there, then it's not going to fit. It's not going to, I'm going to wind up going back to stamp it and it's going to be too late. I will have had put paper where it shouldn't have been and it's not going to work. So I'm just going to go ahead and stamp. Normally I don't do this because I like to make sure it dries and everything. I don't want to smear the ink, but at this point I'm just going to go ahead and do it. Just be careful not to touch that. And I didn't bother drying it or anything. So I like that pink strip, trying to decide, do I want to keep Celebrate? Do I want to do that? Again, this is, when you're making a card, you're going to do a lot of this. Just try different things. So there's that puffy, there's that embossed shadow die under that white, and as I'm starting to play with it, I like that, but I just don't like the pink. I just feel like it needs some color. So what we're actually going to wind up doing is putting some different cardstock underneath that white. And I love the floaties. I just felt like that since we've got the puffy floaty that we're going to put on there, we might as well use a floaty background. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to line it up. I'm going to glue that over the top, and then we're going to put that on the front of the card. It's just trial and error. When you finish a project, if you're like me, you're going to have a lot of scraps left over. I have a box full of scraps from Stamps of Life, Spellbinders, all the different card kits and clubs. Anytime I'm working with a paper pad, doesn't matter where I've got the paper pad from, I have all these scraps left, and I just throw them in a box. And then one day when I feel like making a card, I just dump it out and I just start finding stuff that matches. Just throw stuff together, grab a die, grab a stamp, grab whatever. So on this one, what we've done is just put those little floaties behind that white piece that's been embossed. Now we're going to go back and we're going to use the main cutout that I did and colored in with a colored pencil. We're going to glue that over the top. And it just looks like, you can't see it on the video, but it's like a puffy sticker. I love that technique. I will use that on many, many cards to come in the future. So the last thing to do is just to glue that last little piece in there. Make sure you don't lose your little inside pieces. So we're going to glue that in there, and that's going to get that done. Now, looking at the card, thinking, it just needs something. It still needs something. And so we've got some more stamps. And what I decided to do was add, since there was another sentiment that came with the kit, it just seemed to fit. So I figured we're going to put it at the bottom. And I think it's going to look good over that yellow, sort of yellow and blue with the paper that I just thought it would work well, is add the little phrase with a thankful heart. I'm going to use my little corner round and make the whole card just like that. And you can actually stand the card up. A bunch of different things to do with that. So looking at that, going to grab some of our enamel dots just to kind of fill in the edges there, just to take away some of the roughness of the corners and the different cutting that we were doing there. We pop in our enamel dots. And when it's all said and done, this was a card that I had no idea when I started what it was going to look like. And I actually like it. And actually, my wife needed a card the other day, and I said, how about this one I made? And she actually wound up sending it to someone. So I had no plans whatsoever. It just emerged this way. We're going to use some of the puffy stickers that came with the kit, put a little of those flowers on there, and I just like the card. There you go. So that's just about it, guys. 9 cards. We go back and grab this one, which is now the glue has dried, and that card is done. And we're going to just kind of review all of the cards that we've done in the done with the techniques we use from the die cutting techniques, as well as the stuff that came in the card kit from this floaty card kit. So that's card number 1. We got card number 2 right here. And let me just adjust my camera just a little bit so you can see everything. And we're going to lay these cards out like we always do. So you got card number 1, card number 2 there. And you can see all the leftover pieces. Again, never ever really seem to use everything. Just keep that little scrap box going and then just grab stuff. So this is card number 3. Got the stamps, got the little starfish on there. Let your troubles float away. Happy summer. Then we got card number 4, the What a Day card, the one where we wound up just keeping the words, the same color word die inside the main die and the shadow die together. So we've got card number 4 there. Again, all these extra pieces, they'll get used somewhere down the road. Got card number 5, which is the opened front card, it looks like it's there, and then you open it up, that what a day is actually on the inside. And we did this one without the shadow die on the inside underneath the what a day. It just looked good over that shade of green. I'm not sure what it is, but it just looked really good there. So that's card number 5. And then we've got card number 6, which is the double opening front. And this one we did use the main die and the shadow die. And that one, the seahorse was actually colored in with the colored pencils. You can see that there as we get a little closer to the camera. I love coloring. It's one of the things I love about card making. I love stamping and color. I love using colored pencils. I cannot afford Copic markers, but I love colored pencils. So number 7, card number 7 here is the next What a Day card. With a few little puffy stickers on the front there. Open it up, and again on the inside we used both the dies for the What a Day on the inside. So that's going to finish up, that's that card. That's card number 7. And you can actually stand that up. Again, most of these cards you can stand up. I just like the way that one looks. So there's that card. All right. So then card number 9 or 8, I can't count. Card number 8 was the very first card we did. I like that on the inside. I'm going to use that more often, especially with a friendship card. If I have 2 dies that just seem to go well together, that you can put on the inside of the card embossed like that. And you could have embossed directly onto the card. I just don't like the backside showing through. This way it's kind of hidden. Okay. So the last card we did, of course, was the thrown together card, which actually came out really well. Like I said, we've already given it away. Just really like that card. So there you go, guys. I hope once again this is giving you some ideas, some creative ways to think about putting cards together. As always, just remember that the ability to create is a gift from God. Enjoy what you do. Have a good time with this. Just relax, have fun, make cards, give them away, enjoy life, because it really is a gift from God. So as always, Pastor Ian here saying, have a blessed day, and as always, happy crabby crafting.